This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Terrible day for Donald Trump in trial. I'm going to update you right here on this hot take, or should I call him David Dennison? I learned today from lawyer Keith Davidson, the lawyer for both Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougall, the Playboy Playmate, both of which had sordid tales to tell about Donald Trump having sex outside his marriage, for which they were paid off. The lawyer that handled that said that he had a secret code word that he used with Michael Cohen to protect Donald Trump's identity in this transaction, and he called him David Dennison, an old hockey buddy of his. Everybody in the courtroom laughed. The jury is sitting at rapt attention. They can't take their eyes off of Keith Davidson, who is slowly killing Donald Trump in the courthouse. I thought that David Pecker, the National Enquirer editor, was terrible for Donald Trump until I met Keith Davidson. Keith Davidson, who's a lawyer, representing two of the three targets of the catch and kill conspiracy, or what the prosecutors call the Trump Tower conspiracy, which is at the heart of the criminal case against Donald Trump, 34 counts of felonies. I never thought so early in a case, day 9 of a trial, you could have a witness tied together and corroborate so much of the evidence and of the theme of the case by the prosecutors until I met Keith Davidson. What has he done so far? And the jury's listening. A jury that Maggie Haberman from the New York Times has reported every time they leave and come back into the courtroom, don't even make eye contact with Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump is easy not to make eye contact. First of all, he's got some weird entourage in the courtroom today, according to reporting. Ken Paxton, the Texas Attorney General, is there. Lord knows why. The Club for Growth guy is there. I mean, again, just this motley crew, rogues gallery of MAGA right-wing people that want to get their picture taken with Donald Trump as he's being tried for criminal felonies. But forget them. Forget the fact that jury's not making eye contact with Donald Trump, which is always a bad sign. I'll tell you that from a trial lawyer's perspective. Keith Davidson corroborated every major point in the storyline of this prosecution. He was able uniquely to testify about the first deal with Karen McDougall, how it was made. Michael Cohen. Now look, Michael Cohen didn't come off great with Keith Davidson. He hasn't come off great with some of the other witnesses either. Keith Davidson said he's a very unpleasant fellow to deal with, that he frequently yells and curses and screams, and that nobody really wanted to deal with Michael Cohen. But at the same time, Keith Davidson said the thing the prosecutors needed him to tell the jury, that at all times Keith Davidson believed that Donald Trump was the one that was orchestrating the payoffs and the deals in order to help his election. That was Keith Davidson's opinion. He knew that Donald Trump, in effect, was the beneficiary. We call it a third-party beneficiary of the agreement that was being negotiated by Michael Cohen, who was nothing more than a beard or a straw man here, negotiating on behalf of the real party in interest, Donald J. Trump. Or should I call him David Dennison, the secret code word that was used? You know, you need secret code words when things are going fine and you're not committing a crime, right? Okay, Dennison tells a story about Karen McDougall, how the negotiations were so rough and so hard, and it came through ultimately a David Pecker payment. But then we have the bombshell of Access Hollywood as an event. The Access Hollywood hot take moment in October that came out in October of 2016, the October surprise, if you will, while he was campaigning Trump against Hillary Clinton. It rocked the world of the Trump organization and Trump's campaign. That is a theme for the prosecutors. And Keith Davidson supported that theme. He said if it wasn't for the Access Hollywood hot mic leak in which Donald Trump is heard on recording, saying that he can, without any repercussions, grab a woman by her genitalia and get away with it because he's a celebrity, that created renewed pressure and leverage for Stormy Daniels to be able to obtain a payment from Donald Trump in order for her not to tell her story on top of Karen McDougall's story. Keith Davidson testified today, the lawyer for both of them, that if it wasn't for the Access Hollywood, that Donald Trump and Michael Cohen would not have entered into a deal with his client. That is consistent, 100%, and lines up perfectly with what the prosecutors told the jury in opening statement. A jury that is not looking at Donald Trump, but is just looking at Keith Davidson, the way they looked at Pecker. And I'll give him another credit. He must be a trial lawyer because he knew to always look at the jury when he gave his testimony. You know, that jury box, it's easy when you're testifying to look at the lawyer. Got to turn your head to look at the jury. But the reporting in the room is he is looking, he's turning and looking at the jury, making eye contact every time. David Pecker did it too. David Pecker, because he's a media guy, he knew he needed to make his point. Very effective. They also heard from Keith Davidson, that at all times he knew that Donald Trump was the real party in interest, the third party beneficiary of the contract, even if the contract between his clients were between Michael Cohen's company, he knew Michael Cohen was just a pawn. All right. And he testified that he was an unpleasant pawn. He didn't like dealing with him, but that he was a pawn nonetheless. Exactly what the prosecutors, again, have told the jury. So this is the prosecution cashing checks they wrote in front of the jury during opening statement. Let's keep going, because Keith Davidson keeps going. So when he was done talking about Karen McDougall, tying together the Access Hollywood tape that rocked Trump world, leading to the negotiations with Michael Cohen, he also supported the prosecution's evidence that's going to be coming out through Michael Cohen and others, that Michael Cohen, really Donald Trump, tried to avoid paying Stormy Daniels, even though they negotiated to $130,000 payment amount, even though there was a deadline, many of them that were missed, because Donald Trump is cheap. And he was trying to save a buck, and he thought if he could just string Stormy Daniels along, which would be the equivalent of her not running her story, past the election, he wouldn't need her. He'd throw her on the trash heap, just like he treats most women, not pay her, and laugh his way all the way to the White House. And they tried to do that, except for Keith Davidson, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, wouldn't let that happen. So instead of getting a payment on time, he got, in his view, his testimony, an expletive-laden email, many of them, frantic, from Michael Cohen. When it was clear that Stormy Daniels, who had a good lawyer here in Keith Davidson, was going to go public, they finally had to pay her before. But there is going to be testimony, including through Michael Cohen himself, that Donald Trump basically said, F Stormy Daniels, let's string this out all along as far as we can so I don't have to pay her and I'll laugh all the way to the White House. My paraphrase. Keith Davidson testified to support that. He said, it looked to me like Michael Cohen was trying to kick the can down the road beyond the election. That ties the case right back to election interference, which makes this case a felony. Again, another check cashed for the prosecution based on their promises to the jury. So you have all of that. I mean, there's nobody who's better situated from the vantage point of Keith Davidson, representing both 2/3 of the catch and kill program targets in Karen McDougall and in Stormy Daniels, and corroborating everything that Pecker said about the intricacies and the details of how the payments were made and where they were made and how they were made for Karen McDougall and then later through Michael Cohen. Because remember, if National Enquirer makes the payments, we're on a different type of case. But Michael Cohen Trump Organization made the payments, always using the Trump Organization email for communication. Again, ringing the bell constantly in front of the jury. This is Trump. Trump's the puppet master. Trump is the organizer. I can't tell you how many times Josh Steinglass, who I'm going to put a giant poster in my room of trial lawyers, Hall of Fame, because he's doing an amazing job for the prosecutors. Josh Steinglass, who also did David Pecker in direct examination, how many times he's rung the bell in front of the jury that the boss is Donald Trump, that the man upstairs, the boss wants this, the boss wants that. Always Michael Cohen linking himself with Donald Trump. I can't make the deal with you right now. I can't negotiate that one term. I almost slipped into my Michael Cohen impression because the boss is traveling among several states. I'll get back to you, right? Because the real party in interest, the beneficiary of the agreement is Donald Trump in order to interfere with the election as an improper campaign contribution. So that was Keith Davidson. One of my favorite moments reported about Keith Davidson is when the Access Hollywood tape dropped, which the jury is going to hear the transcript of, but not actually hear it, because that's a decision the judge made about the power of the audio. But the transcript they're getting, and they've gotten. But Davidson says that when the Access Hollywood dropped in October and led to a frantic Trump organization, he reached out to the National Enquirer publisher, right, who sits in Australia, apparently, who this jury is not going to hear from directly because apparently he's in Australia and he's got some sort of spinal condition and he can't travel. He said to him, the lawyer said to the publisher, wave the white flag, Trump campaign. You're doomed. You're done. Stick a fork in it. That the Access Hollywood tape was that earth-shattering and potentially electoral shifting that the Trump organization panicked. And that's good for the jury to hear because that's the theme for the prosecutors. Access Hollywood tape rocks Trump world. They push the button and start through Trump the conspiracy to do the catch and kill program, checkbook journalism, as David Pecker said, to buy the stories of any women reporting sexual misconduct or any kind of sexual misconduct from anybody in order for Donald Trump to try to win the election, the first election interference case. Even the judge today, Judge Merchan, by the way, just to show you what we are calling this trial, in his new decision and order finding Donald Trump in criminal contempt for violating the gag order, he said as follows, that the charges here arise from allegations that Trump attempted to conceal an illegal scheme to influence the 2016 presidential election, right? And that he directed an attorney who worked for his company, Cohen, for Trump Organization, to pay $130,000 to an adult film actress, Stormy Daniels, shortly before the election, October, to prevent her from publicizing an alleged sexual encounter. That's the judge's own view of the case. It's not a finding. He's not the finder of fact, but it's important as we listen to Mr. Davidson's testimony. I mean, he hit so many corroborating points even before Michael Cohen eventually takes the stand. He's going to be surfing and riding on the wave, on the crest of so many witnesses who, even the ones that don't like him, who say he's telling the truth. And again, you've got this false bravado going on in the courtroom. As, for instance, it's reported that Todd Blanche, the lawyer for Donald Trump, seems to have developed a bit of a chuckle fest. He's a chuckling character. When he heard about Michael Cohen's expletive-laden emails and his yelling and screaming and how unpleasant Michael Cohen is, Cohen, yeah, nudging Donald Trump, try to get him awake, nudge him awake. Why? Because he thinks it plays into his hand that Michael Cohen can be cross-examined to death? I doubt it. Because the prosecutors aren't worried. Josh Steinglass doubled down on it. When somebody would say, well, that man was unpleasant. Well, who is that man? Michael Cohen was unpleasant. They don't care. They want it all out. They want the bell rung for the jury well before Michael Cohen's appearance. I called him a sandwich witness for a reason. He's not going to be anywhere in the first 5, 6, 7 witnesses. He's going to be way down the road. By that time, so much corroborating evidence and witness testimony and physical evidence has been presented to the jury that Michael Cohen will almost be an afterthought, except for his secret recordings of Donald Trump and him putting together the tacit agreement to pay off Stormy Daniels in cash. We'll continue to report. Yes, he'll get this lawyer who knows his way around a courtroom. Let me just tell you that. And is not to be trifled with. This Keith Davidson is going to be cross-examined starting tomorrow or starting this week. But in the meantime, I wanted you to know about the direct examination and how powerful it is. And if you remember nothing else from my hot takes about trial practice, jury science tells us that juries make their decision, and the juries have already made their decision at the beginning of the case, not the end or the middle. That they made their decision based on the checks that were written by the prosecution in promises that they made. And after seeing the first witness, David Pecker, testify, they're ready to vote. They're ready to vote now. If you could have polled them then and compare it to their verdict at the end, it would be almost an identical match. And witnesses like Keith Davidson, lawyer for Stormy Daniels, lawyer for Karen McDougall, are only reinforcing the instincts of the jury now to convict Donald Trump. I'll continue to report on it the best way I know how as a practicing trial lawyer in the New York court system and co-founder, co-anchor of Legal AF on the MeidasTouch network on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and then on audio podcast platforms of your choice. You want to learn more about the law Even if you're not a lawyer, especially if you're not a lawyer. We sit at that intersection of law and politics, but we have a Patreon, patreon.com/legalaf. It's like a TED Talk in a law school class. Have a baby. And we do it right there. You want to learn about state and federal practice, criminal and civil practice, civil rights, constitutional rights, class action cases, right? Damages, sentencing, everything. We do it there with exclusive content you won't find anywhere else on the internet. Patreon.com/legalaf. So until my next hot take, speaking of hot takes, you can tell I'm in New York. Until my next Legal AF, until my next Patreon exclusive content, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.